Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're bringing something seriously substantive to the table, specifically for the developers, the quants, and the finance pros tuning in. We're going to completely break down modern vaulting architecture, but more importantly, we're mapping out a highly specific, multi-billion-dollar market gap that is literally just sitting there, waiting to be exploited on Hyperliquid. If you're looking for where the absolute next massive wave of on-chain capital formation is happening, well, you're in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want to start by framing the sheer scale of what we're talking about today. Castle Labs firmly establishes vaults as a fundamental, permanent pillar of institutional on-chain finance. They put it perfectly, noting that together with stablecoins and perps, vaults complete the triad of the most successful primitives crypto has ever seen. Right? They aren't just some passing trend, they are a core primitive. Alongside stablecoins and perpetual futures, vaults are the actual infrastructure making DeFi functional for large-scale capital. And surprisingly, even when the broader market turns down, the institutional appetite for these automated yield vehicles just keeps accelerating.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll cover the vaultification of finance. Second, modular vault architecture. Third, we'll get into the Hyperliquid tech stack. Fourth, the curator concentration gap. And finally, exactly how you can deploy the next generation. Let's get to it.
Part 1. The vaultification of finance. Establishing the standard.
You know, to really grasp the current opportunity, we have to recognize what unlocked institutional adoption in the very first place. Think back to before standardization. Every yield-bearing smart contract was totally custom-built. It was a complete nightmare for integrators. But then, the ERC 4626 standard dropped and introduced a single universal interface. On the back end, an ERC 4626 vault just operates as an ERC20 share token, but with 16 standard methods. We're talking highly deterministic functions like deposit, withdraw, and convert to shares. Because every vault now speaks the exact same language, complex automated risk management and massive liquidity aggregation became possible pretty much overnight. It completely stripped away the friction.
Part 2. Modular vault architecture, the four-role design.
Now, as institutions started pouring significantly more capital into these standardized vaults, a new hurdle popped up. Monolithic vaults, where absolutely everything is controlled by one entity or a single code block, they just weren't cutting it anymore for complex risk management. They had to evolve. And to understand this evolution, let's consider the MorphoVault's V2 architecture. They took the model and strictly segregated the duties into 4 distinct roles. You got the owner, handling the high-level governance. You have the curator, who defines the risk parameters, things like which markets are allowed and what the supply caps are. Then the allocator jumps in to handle the day-to-day shifting of capital, but strictly within those defined guardrails. And finally, the sentinel acts as a reactive security layer. This separation of duties is absolutely vital. Why? Because it's what finally satisfies TradFi compliance standards without requiring every single manager to be a smart contract auditing genius.
Now, I want to pause specifically on the Sentinel for a second, because this is a critical security mechanism. The source material offers a very stark warning here. You absolutely must distinguish the role of the Sentinel from that of the curator. If you collapse the curator and the Sentinel roles under the exact same multi-sig signers, well, that entire separation collapses right along with it. You just end up concentrating the private key risk back into a single point of failure. Modularity only actually works when the roles are genuinely independent.
Moving right along to Part 3, the Hyperliquid tech stack. Action layer infrastructure.
Okay, so having this advanced modular architecture is great in theory, right? But to actually execute these complex, multi-layered financial primitives efficiently, you need some seriously high-performance plumbing. Hyperliquid state execution provides exactly this, by elegantly splitting into 2 main components. First up, you have Hypercore. This is optimized from first principles, housing fully on-chain perpetual futures and spot order books with native one-block finality. But honestly, the real magic happens when you pair that with the Hyper EVM. The Hyper EVM brings that familiar general-purpose smart contract flexibility, the kind pioneered by Ethereum, right into the Hyperliquid ecosystem. What does that mean for you? It means you can build permissionless ERC 4626 vaults on the EVM that natively interact with the deepest, most performant liquidity over on Hypercore. It's the best of both worlds.
And to really wrap your head around the sheer scale we're talking about here, consider this number. 200,000. That is the number of orders per second that Hypercore currently supports. 200,000. And crazy enough, that throughput is constantly improving as they optimize the node software.
Listen, when you're building automated vaults that might need to actively allocate or reactively deallocate capital in a split second to protect depositors, running on a custom Layer 1 that handles 200,000 orders per second using its custom Hyper BFT consensus, that means you are building on true institutional-grade rails.
Which brings us to part 4, the curator concentration gap, the data behind the oligopoly.
So let's recap. We've got the standard, we have the modular architecture, we have the high-performance L1. Now let's dig into the actual data to uncover where the specific inefficiency lies in today's market. What is wild about the market share data is the glaring oligopoly it reveals. We are looking at a $6.5 billion total value locked in their risk-curated vault market. But pay attention to who actually controls it. Centaura, Steakhouse, Gauntlet. Just 3 curators control roughly 75% of this entire multi-billion-dollar market. 75%. That leaves a staggering lack of competition. And the data heavily implies that this concentration isn't because these 3 are somehow unbeatable. It's simply an early market gap. There literally just aren't enough independent quants and developers out there deploying competing vaults yet.
And the business model here, it is incredible. Just contrast the bloated fees of traditional hedge funds, which, generally charge 1 to 2% of assets under management plus 10 to 20% of the upside, with the model of on-chain risk curators. Because the smart contract infrastructure handles all the heavy lifting, on-chain curators can run remarkably lean. Take Steakhouse Financial, for example, one of the top curators. They take just 0.14% of total AUM. But because it's so highly scalable, that tiny percentage generates around $3 million in annualized revenue on their $2.13 billion AUM. The disruptive potential to swoop in and capture market share by offering lean, transparent, highly competitive vaults is just immense. Which leads us perfectly into part 5, deploying the next generation, your concrete opportunity.
We've synthesized the macro trend, the tech stack, and that massive market gap. So what is your concrete opportunity in all of this? I think the crucial takeaway is captured perfectly by Darren from IPR Fusion. He notes that this starts to very much resemble TradFi funds just on a different infrastructure, and that vaults replace much of the human intervention. Think about that. The future of asset management isn't some abstract sci-fi concept. It's literally just TradFi logic deployed on vastly superior rails. By replacing human intervention with deterministic code, you drastically reduce operational costs and you create a way better experience for allocators. It completely legitimizes vaults in the eyes of institutional investors who are absolutely desperate for yield but require strict, transparent risk guardrails.
All of which means the playbook for developers, quants, and emerging fund managers is right here for the taking. You've got a $6.5 billion market completely dominated by just 3 players. You have the Hyper EVM ecosystem providing the absolute cutting-edge, permissionless infrastructure to deploy your own ERC-4626 standard vaults. By utilizing that 4-role modular architecture, making sure to keep your curators and sentinels separate to maintain that rock-solid security, you can create bespoke strategies that leverage the blazing speed of Hypercore's order books. You can start small, build an immutable on-chain track record, and then systematically capture market share from those incumbents. The tools are totally permissionless, and they are sitting right there. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one fundamental truth from the source material. Risk doesn't disappear. It just shifts to another layer. The demand for intelligent, trustworthy actors to manage that risk is at an all-time high, while the supply of such curators remains incredibly concentrated. You have the statin, you have the modular architecture, and now with Hyperliquid, you have the high-performance execution layer. The gap is wide open. So will you be the one to step up and curate it? Thanks so much for learning with us today.